Welcome to Seth's Daily Podcast. Without you guys, this wouldn't be possible. I thank you guys for subscribing. We're blessed enough to have an absolute legend with us, Kid Kash. How are you doing tonight, man?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing great, man. And I know, do you have any Ric Flair stories?
Oh, everybody's got Ric Flair stories. Um, I've just been on the planes with him before, going over to Europe and stuff. And Flair likes to drink. Well, he used to. I heard he quit, but he used to really like to drink a lot. Generally, when back in the day, if he disappeared, then he was usually going to come out with his robe on and nothing else up under it. So he had no problem with showing his manlyhood anywhere.
What is it like working for each management and each promotion, and how was the lifestyle of it? I know it was probably a lot of a lot of driving, a lot of plane and everything, man. Riding on planes and stuff.
Oh, in the early days when you're getting started, nobody's going to fly you anywhere. So, we had to drive everywhere, and at that time when I was like with ECW, I was driving to ECW shows from Tennessee all the way up north every single week. But then I wrestled for Japan and as well. So I would fly to Japan. They would pay for all my travel, and ECW didn't pay for any of my travel. So not for the first year, but once I proved to them that I was, wanting to be a part of the group and contribute to the group and stuff like that, they started flying me and gave me a contract and and things like that. And I was one of the actually few people that really actually had a contract with that company. So
Yeah.
I felt pretty good about it. I mean, it was just I was one of the people, one with the contract, but only other people that had them were like Rob Van Dam, Shane Douglas, Sabu, Taz, the Dudleys. Those guys had contracts. The rest of them didn't. They got paid by the night, and I got paid by the night for first year. And then, I guess I'm just, like I said, I proved myself, because I just drove. I would drive from Johnson City, Tennessee to all the way up to Salem, New Hampshire, Boston, Massachusetts, and Staten Island, New York, Philadelphia, Cleveland, Ohio, Chicago. I mean, we went a lot of places, and I literally drove every single one of those towns for the first year.
Yeah.
But after that, once they start flying you and the word gets around, you've had a contract with somebody, everybody else pretty much just starts flying you as well. So when I left DCW, I had signed with WCW very briefly. They flew me in to the shows, and then I went to XWF with Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Hart. And of course they flew. So I flew after that pretty much everywhere except for TNA, but I actually was only driving to TNA because they were in Nashville and I was only 3 hours away. So I wound up just going in and moving to Nashville back in 2000, I think. And so I lived there until just last year. Now I'm living in,
Yeah, dude, that's you definitely have a legendary and a Hall of Fame career for sure, man. I mean, you're a former WWE Cruiserweight champion, and I know you debuted at a WWE pay-per-view and won the Cruiserweight title. That's a hell of a way to debut, man.
When they signed me, they definitely wanted to use me, and only sad part about it, we were doing really good. I mean, the first contract was only for 3 years, and after I lost the Cruiserweight title, they put Jamie and Noble and I together as the Pitbulls, and we were doing really well. We were actually going to win the tag titles from it was either going to, I think it was Eminem, and at No Way Out, and the week of, Gary Wolf from the original Pitbulls of ECW, he owned the name. So he was sending out cease and desist from his lawyer and stuff. And he either wanted like royalty from it, or he wanted to be part of the show, one or the other, and they didn't want to give him either one. So they wound up just busting the tag team up, and Jamie went to talent relations. They were, and if you notice, they were busting up the cruiserweight division too. They were just going to run it out, and then that was it. And that's what they've always done with the cruiserweight division. It was over for a while, and then they kind of put it on the back burner for a little bit. Then they bring it out, then they put it on the back burner, then they bring it out again. So we were going through that cycle, and they told me they wanted me to go to the ECW brand. And when I originally signed, they didn't want me to be a part of the ECW. They wanted me to be an established character on a SmackDown, and they wanted me to be a WWE product. And so asking me to go to the ECW brand, I started just kind of paying attention a little more of how they were doing things with the ECW. And I noticed that all of the original guys that they were bringing in from the ECW, they would keep them for 6 months, and then they would just let them go, and then they would have all these new young guys, put them over and stuff, So it just seemed that's the way it was going. Not really sure if that's exactly the way it was going, but, that's the way it looked like to me. It was going. My contract was coming up, and I just decided not to re-sign with them, because I didn't want to re-sign and then do an ECW, brand with WWE, and they get jobbed out every night and then wind up just getting released, So they just, I don't know, they wanted the company really bad, but then they had to use the original guys to actually get that brand over in the WWE. But the way they got them over is they beat them, they just brought them in and beat them. And to me, that wasn't a great way of getting anybody over, just my opinion. But
I mean, you're one of the ECW legends, man. I mean, you held a belt there. I mean, you've held a belt in Impact, you've held a belt in WWE, you've held a belt everywhere, man. How was it fighting in Japan and stuff? And also, how does it feel to be a TNA original? Also,
you want to talk wrestling in Japan or fighting in Japan?
wrestling in Japan.
Wrestling in Japan was as real as it gets. Stiff is really stiff. A lot of kicks, a lot of chops, a lot of just stuff that's laid in. They didn't mess around over there. I used to have a little angle with Tajiri whenever I was in ECW, and we would go from ECW to Japan, and we would still wrestle each other over there. And I had just broken my jaw in ECW. And so after that pay-per-view was over with, I broke my jaw on a Saturday in Center Stage in Atlanta. And then I wrestled the pay-per-view in Birmingham the next day. Had to go to the hospital, get my jaw wired shut. Drove down to Birmingham from there, from the doctor's office. Got me a hotel room, but I had that angle going on with Tajiri. So when we got over to Japan, after that whole broken jaw thing was over with, we're working each other, and I took a slam and I rolled over on my belly, and I was on my hands and knees, and he kicks me like literally right square in my face, like threw it, laid it in, just kicked the piss out of me. And so it turned into a little bit of a shoot brawl wrestling match, but he always brought it, and I always brought it. So he didn't think any different, and I didn't think any different either. I just thought he was a little disrespectful at that moment, but he actually forgot that my jaw was broken, supposedly, and he just kicked me in my face, so all wired shut, after flying 16 hours to Japan with a broken jaw, wired shut, and it was only broken 2 nights before I left. So those were the days.
Yeah. And how did it feel when you got the X Division title in Impact, man? That is very impressive.
uh, here's the thing about that. I didn't want to be in the company anymore. I felt like I had signed with the company a little premature, because WWE wanted to after WCW, and I had signed with WCW, and I was there for about a month, and that's when WWE bought the company. They actually wanted to keep me, but they wanted to renegotiate the contract. They wanted me to move to Cincinnati, and that meant I would have had to sell my house. At that point, I was in my 30s, so I was an established grown man. I had a house, I had a kid at home. I couldn't just pack up and go to a developmental territory in Cincinnati, and make the minimum, whenever, even though they was going to renegotiate my contract, but I signed a pretty good deal with WCW, and they wanted to renegotiate me down to 65,000 a year, and then wanted me to go to Cincinnati, get an apartment, and all this other stuff, and live there and work for Heartland Wrestling until they called me up. And I asked John Laurinaitis, I was like, well, realistically, how long are we looking here? Because when you're already over from the ECW and other places and stuff like that, if you take too much time off of TV, then the people forget about you. You know what I'm saying? So you got to stay out there as long as you can. So, and his response was, it could be 3 weeks, it could be 3 months, it could be 3 years, who knows? And I just didn't want to take that chance and sitting on the shelf and getting stale. So I wanted to keep working, and I wanted to keep my name going. So that's when I just went on ahead and left again. And but anyway, I was, when I signed with ECW, I mean with TNA, I was just trying it out because it was still a new show, still a new territory, and you just didn't know how things were going to go. And I only signed a year deal with them. But with their contracts, they, in the very fine lettering, in the very fine print, it says they had the option to roll me over at the end of that year if they made any kind of merchandise with my likeness on it. See, I actually own my name. Kid Kash is copyrighted, it's trademarked, and nobody else can use it but me, So with that, they put my name out there, and they were selling merchandise. Well, the only thing was they were selling was an 8x10 picture. That was it. So they knew that I wasn't happy with, the company, and I just didn't want to be there anymore. I wasn't happy working there. I didn't really like a lot of the guys that was in the dressing room and things like that. Just, it was a different, it was supposed to be a different world, but it really was. It was a different world, but it was a different world in the wrong ways. Just a bunch of new young guys that nobody had ever heard of, that the company was just shoving down people's throats, and these kids were getting these big egos, and things like that. And then the kids been in the business 5 years compared to me at that time being in the business 15 years, already had a name, already been somewhere. And then when you call a match with them, it's like they just baby and cried if they couldn't get their shit in, and you're just like, look, man, it's about working and working together. It's not about you getting out there and getting all your fucking moves. It's about us working together, and, so I just wasn't happy with management. Their vision of my character, I didn't agree with. They knew that I could get anybody over at that time. I could wrestle anybody. And I could wrestle any style at that time. I could wrestle the old school way. I could wrestle the selling way, wrestle the high flying luchador way, the Mexican, technical high flying. I could wrestle the European, technical, style wrestling, hook wrestling, and, things of that. So you could put me in the ring with anybody and we were going to have a 5-star match. And they knew that. So at the end of that year, just because they had an 8x10 on me, they wanted to be a bunch of dickheads, and they did it deliberately, and they rolled me over. Well, and they didn't even tell me about it either. So what they did they put the Cruiserweight title, the X Division title on me, thinking that I would want to stay in the company. And I didn't. That belt meant absolutely nothing to me. I can't take that belt to the grocery store and buy groceries with it. I can't do anything with that belt other than, carry it in my bag and, wear it around my waist. That's it, and I didn't really truly win it. I came from an MMA background, so I knew what real fighting and real winning was all about. This is not really winning. So that belt means absolutely nothing to me. You can have it back. And I told Bob Ryder, I was like, here, where do you want it? He's, no, you take that home with you. And I was like, I don't want to take this damn thing home with me. He was like, well, why not? I was like, because I don't really plan on being here that long. Oh, well, we rolled you over on your contract, so you're going to be here for another year. Well, when I got that news, then that's when, things started going downhill. And I'm sure you heard some of the stories about me and TNA in the office and things like that. I mean, we fought tooth and nail always. I was shooting on guys. I'd go out there. They wanted me to wrestle AJ Styles a few times, and I just absolutely beat his ass. I mean, I just beat him up. I mean, there wasn't even really a wrestling match to it. I just beat him up on purpose. And so hopefully they would fire me, and they didn't. So we had a big, long meeting one Friday, I believe, at the office there in Nashville. And, Jeff Jarrett and I were talking, and I just simply asked him, why would you hold somebody to something that they don't want to be a part of? I'm sorry, nothing, just let me go. And hopefully maybe in the future we can do some business together. Who knows? But right now is not the right time, and I don't really want to be here. So, and he was like, no, I'm not letting you go. And I was like, why? Why would you do that? And he just looked at me in the face and said, because that's my prerogative. I can do whatever the fuck I want to do. And I was like, really? Okay. So that's whenever all hell broke loose. I just went to work and I beat up every single person that they put me in the ring with them. I made it to the point where they refused to work me. I would literally shoot on them. I would crank them. I would chop them in the back. I would chop them in the side of the neck. I mean, I was doing everything I could to hurt them. And I wanted to make a point. I shouldn't have done that, honestly. I mean, those guys had nothing to do with what was going on with me in the office, but it was that time, I wasn't thinking clearly, thinking that arrogant, I guess, mentality of I'm Kid Kash, you're not going to do this to me kind of thing. It was wrong, but, back then what they were doing was wrong to me, so I was just paying them back for what they were doing to me. And I mean, a couple of the guys, I got quite a few talkers too about Jerry Jarrett and Jeff Jarrett. I come through the curtain and they would be mad as hell. They'd be like, you can't be going there just beating people up like that. And I was like, I'll beat you up. You're a punk. Everybody who knows Jeff Jarrett knows that he's not a fighter, and he's just a daddy's boy. I mean, he's never done really anything in his career. I mean, his daddy, handed him everything, hand over foot. I mean, he would have never gotten a job in WWE. He would have never gotten a job at WCW if his daddy hadn't got him a job. His dad, I don't know if you guys know this, but Jerry Jarrett was a powerful man for a very long time. And he had a lot of flow. He had a lot of influence. And that man, I mean, after USWA, a lot of people didn't know that he was in the office with the WWE. Yeah, he was a big wig there. And that's how Jeff got here. Well, after Jeff and all them, we all saw what what Jeff's really like when he did that shit with the belt, held up Vince McMahon for $300,000. I'll take your belt to WCW if you don't give me $300,000 tonight, right now, and it's kind of like the Ultimate Warrior, what they did, Ultimate Warrior, but Ultimate Warrior wanted more money and he got it, So, Jeff did what he did, and then he left and went to WCW, and because of his dad and Vince Russo, so Jeff has never really ever done anything on his own. He's always had buddies, or he's always had his dad or somebody hiring because they didn't want to piss his dad off, or they didn't want to upset his dad. So that's how he made it in this business all these years. So, and I just never had any respect for him. So I used to threaten to beat his ass all the time, and he knew I could. So I would like do something about it, fire me or get their ass whipped, one or the other. I don't give a shit about you. You're a punk. I mean, I used to cuss him to his face, and a lot of all the stuff I shouldn't have done. But now that I'm older and sit back and think about it, there's probably not the way to go. But it is what it is, But I didn't want to be there, so of course they, took the belt off of me and tried to make me miserable, and Dutch Mantel just loved me. And so did Jerry. Jared loved everything about me. But Dutch's mentality was that I was such a good heel that I could lose every single night and it wouldn't matter. And I just looked at him and I'm like, yeah, that's not the road I want to go down. I'm not that old to be out here just being a beaten post and a get over, for these young guys. If these young guys can't get themselves over, you're going to stop using me to do it. And that's whenever, like I said, Ask America's Most Wanted, James Storm can tell you, I flattened him a couple of good times, and Chris Harris. Me and Lance used to wrestle those guys quite a bit for the tag belts, and they were just the biggest whiners and crybabies and just prima donnas that you'd ever met in your life, and them and who was the Naturals, Chase Stevens and that Andy Douglas. I mean, their big deal was nobody really at that time still didn't know who they were because TNA wasn't really getting off the ground it was slow getting off the ground. And so after a show, them boys would head straight to the bars and be taking their belts to the fucking bar downtown Nashville. It's like, who does that? And then when we switched over to Florida, Universal Studios, from where we were in Nashville, the very first show, they wanted me and Lance to work America's Most Wanted, and we were going to win the belts from them. But they went to a strip bar the night before and went and left one of the belts in the VIP lounge. So the guy from what was it? Oh God, can't remember the name of the bar, but it was downtown Nashville at the time. So Jeff knew the owner, so Jeff had to call the owner, and they had to one day FedEx that damn belt back to Florida so we could wrestle for the title, but it didn't make it in time. So if you ever watched the show, there's only one belt that ever came out to the ring, and only one belt was won and held in the air. So, but it just shows you what kind of guys they were. They were hungry for attention and doing it in the wrong ways. They was making the company look bad. They was making wrestlers look bad. They were getting out there, getting drunk and getting into fights with people and sucker punching people. And, you don't sucker punch anybody, I mean, that right there just marks you for the rest of your damn life as a punk, so we got 4 punks running around in the TNA sucker punching people when they get drunk in bars because they didn't know who the hell they were. I think one night, one of them got stabbed. Andy Douglas got stabbed because of all that shit, going to the bars, taking their belts, trying to hit on women. Nobody knows who they are because nobody at that time was really watching TNA, and just a select group, just a cult following at that time. So they're getting mad about people not knowing who they are, and they're getting drunker and drunker, and they just mess with the wrong people, guys that didn't give a damn if they were wrestlers or not. When you start hitting on somebody's woman, then all bets are off. I don't give a damn who you are, right? And that's what happened. So Andy wound up getting stabbed, and just shows you what kind of friends they are. The ambulance took him to the hospital, and not a damn one of them went to the hospital with him, especially his own tag team partner. They just left him in the hospital. So, but yeah, so that's why me and TNA just didn't get along, and I didn't really want to be there. And I just the last year that I was there, I made it so hard on everybody that they had no other choice but to fire
me. Yeah, and it must have been interesting working with Vince Russo and Jim Cornette.
I'd worked with Jim for years. I knew Jim many years before I knew Russo. Vince was cool. I never had a problem with Russo. I liked some of his ideas, and then some of them I didn't, but the ones I didn't like, he was a cool guy. He would sit down with you and we would discuss it. And I liked working with him in the talent relations department, because he was very open-minded, nice guy. And like I said, all of the stories I've heard about him, I never saw, for myself, and he always treated me with respect. So I never had a problem with him.
Yeah, I know him and Cornett don't get along.
Cornett don't like anybody.
He doesn't know.
Cornett don't like nobody.
Do you know the wrestler Chance Prophet? He did a impression of Jim Cornette, and it sounded just like him. It was hilarious.
I know Chance, yeah. I haven't heard the impression though. Yeah.
It was the interview I did with him. It was hilarious, man. It sounded just like Jim Cornette, and I could imagine Jim saying it, man. It was hilarious.
Oh yeah. Jim don't care. He's got no filter.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. Listening to his podcast for sure.
Oh yeah.
And how did it feel like having some of the best matches in Impact history in WWE was you and Paul London, man?
It felt good. I mean, it's nice to know. It's always nice that your work is appreciated, So, and then you got guys to work with that can go. I mean, you're not going to click with everybody, but there's going to be a group of guys out there that you absolutely just click with. And Paul London was one of the guys I clicked with. Brian Kendrick was one of the guys I clicked with. Easy Money, back in the ECW days, clicked with him beautifully. No, I mean, I had some good matches with Jesse Storms. Me and him had some really good barn burn matches there in TNA, So, yeah, I mean, one guy can't do it all. You gotta have somebody really good to work with, and those guys were amazing, and they deserve any of the, the props that they got. I don't know if any of them are working, but if they still are, God bless them. Hopefully they're still getting over.
Absolutely, man. And yeah, man, I definitely I know you also fought in MMA as well.
Mm-hmm. I fought on and off MMA since I was 10 years old. I started boxing at 7 at the YMCA, doing tournaments there at the little Pee Wee League. Martial arts at 10. Never stopped. Currently a 3rd-degree black belt in Krav Maga. Have a blue belt in Muay Thai, and I have a red belt in Jiu-Jitsu. So, yeah, I fought for years. Did a lot of amateur fights, 3-round, 3-minute fights. I did pro fights. I did like 6 pro fights in my career. The rest of them were all amateur and tournaments like Pan American Games, NAGA, world tournaments and stuff like that. So generally won my weight class and my height class and stuff like that. So got a lot of first place medals and trophies over the years from that.
Yeah, that's definitely impressive, man. And yeah, man, I definitely want to thank you for doing this interview, man. And it was an honor to interview you, man. Absolute legend. And I want to thank Kid Kash for doing the interview. I want to thank you guys for subscribing. Without you guys, this wouldn't be possible. Y'all have a good night, and God bless.